You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC out of Indianapolis. I hope you've had a really great day because the Democrats have not. And this isn't even one of those times that you can say that it was because the Republicans were big, stinky, mean people because they passed Trump's big, beautiful bill, although they are very upset about that. The Democrats, though, are, in fact, like the child who walks outside licking a delicious ice cream cone. And then, because they are goofing off and not eating their ice cream, or because they're busy gloating about the ice cream on the ice cream cone, they drop the ice cream, letting it melt on the sidewalk, and looking down, realizing that they have in fact thrown their ice cream into the pavement, they begin crying that all too familiar wail that is honestly usually played on loop around the time that President Trump wins an election. So what are some of the things that the Democrats have pulled forward? Because they are starting to unify again. After the election, I asked an important question. When are these Democrats finally going to get it together? When are they finally going to realize what they can deliver to the American people? They had no idea. I talked to kind of co-panelists on the other side of the aisle on network television hits and would ask, are you guys ready yet? Do you need a couple more minutes? You need to use the bathroom before we go? When are you going to have a plan? And they would always tell me the same thing. Well, we don't have anything yet, but we're going to fight Trump and get back to you. And finally, after waiting for nigh on multiple months, the Democrats have finally decided they now have a rallying cry. And they have walked in front of the crowd, waiting to premiere the brand new trailer for an extraordinary strategy we've never seen before. What is this rallying cry? Whining that Trump is a big, meanie racist and that everything is really about white supremacy and that America is really awful. Now, you may say, hey, hang on a second here. Isn't that the exact same strategy that they've had all the time forever and that has cost them multiple elections? Yeah, but they're more angry about it than they were last time, if that were even possible. Example number one, Democrat Mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, is very, 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 very upset. And he thinks that Trump is a monster. Here he is throwing a fit.
As far as, the president's animus towards women, people of color, working people.
He hates women, and he hates people of color, and he hates working people, which is why Democrats completely lost the union-heavy Rust Belt states. He just hates them. He's like Anakin in sand. He can't stand it.
We have always known who he has been. This is not a surprise. He's a monster.
Like under the bed or like in the closet? Or is he like a delicious and refreshing energy drink that is not yet sponsoring the show, although they should be? No, in fact, that's not what he's saying. He's very, very, very upset at the Trump administration. Why? Well, because they are investigating him for admitting he may have hired a bunch of city positions based on race and gender.
Some detractors that will push back on me and say, the only thing that the mayor talks about is the hiring of black people. No, what I'm saying is when you hire our people, we always look out for everybody else.
And people saying, hey, you seem to be hiring just one particular color of people and not, based on their character or their ability. And he says, no, I'm just hiring black people because they're better.
We are the most generous people on the planet.
Reverend Al Sharpton over there looking like Joe Biden after speaking exactly 2 words.
I don't know too many cultures that have play cousins. That's how generous we are.
Don't have play cousins? Wait a minute. Hang on a second here. I know we're getting a little bit off the beaten path. Is he trying to say that no other demographic plays with their cousins? What are you talking about has play cousins? Either he's insinuating A, that other people don't play with their cousins, which if that's the case, my childhood's a lie. And number 2, that if you play with people long enough, like they're friends, then you essentially bring them into your family. Again, my childhood would be a lie were that the case. We had friends when I was a kid that my dad just told me we were long distance cousins to because we were around them so much. So either of those cases, I'm afraid are not exclusive to the black community, nor B, the allowance for you to violate the Civil Rights Act and hire people based on race and gender. Discrimination, not historically a good thing, but yet again, the rallying cry of the left. And this is beginning to funnel this kind of fear-mongering that the right is a monster, this racist monster who hates women and people of color and working class people. That kind of nonsense is, in fact, continually turning into serious violence. Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lishinsky were two Israeli embassy staffers murdered last night in a terrorist shooting. So last night outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C., the two were shot leaving an event held there. The shooter, Elias Rodriguez, a member of the Chicago Party for Socialism and Liberation, is basically, he has extensive ties with the Free Palestine movement. And of course, after he was arrested, he actually walked into the building where the two he just shot came out of. And when he walked in the building, they had no idea what was going on. And they initially served the guy refreshments. Yeah, those mean, awful, terrible Jews, the gall to serve you drinks when you come in the building. Urgh. So when the cops show up and arrest, again, the terrorist shooter, he decides to chant one of those classic identity leftist phrases.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
And the manifesto that he put online, again, just all of these complaints. By the way, this is not an individual who claims to be Gazan or Palestinian. He's not Islamic. This is not an Islamic terror attack. He is a communist, openly a communist. And when I was in the Democratic National Convention protests in Chicago last summer, I actually had the opportunity to meet a few of the Party for Socialism and Liberation people from their Chicago chapter. And shock of all shocks, they are all like that. They are all desperate, bloodthirsty, identity politics-driven nutcases who walked around chanting insane things, calling openly for violence against Jews and Christians and white people, and not just Republicans, but Democrats who would not immediately call for the immediate divestment from anyone they didn't like. And these groups in Chicago affiliated with this movement didn't attack, again, this wasn't a protest of the Republican National Convention. They pushed in the security barrier of the DNC. And when Ilhan Omar, who, of course, again, like Pramila Jayapal, like so many, have all gone to bat for these particular individuals, which we'll get back to that in of course, just a second. When Ilhan Omar was asked today, hey, do you say this is bad? Do you maybe condemn this kind of action, this kind of violence? Not particularly the best answer.
Congresswoman Omar,
can I get your reaction to the shooting that happened in D.C. last night?
I'm going to go for now.
That day, the American people.
Thank you.
The Republicans were intent on.
Oh, she's going to go for now. Oh. Huh. Now, she did put a very blasé, I condemn violence, later on X, which is amazing because whenever there's some type of an incident in which an individual who is Palestinian or Islamic gets killed, then all of a sudden it's Islamophobia has no place. It's horrible. It's terrible. It's awful. Oh, the white supremacy is rampant everywhere all the time. And then all of a sudden it's kind of time to clam up and hey, this may be the group that they have in fact fostered by encouraging to chant genocidal phrases constantly, again, to say that there are acts of mass extermination occurring, which are objectively not the case. But they say this. They say, well, it's actually the people's truth. They feel this way. Again, who are you to say that someone is not a woman? Who are you to say that someone is not feeling systemic racial oppression? Who are you to say? And that is the left's rallying cry. And they are going to make it their banner yet again. Yet again. And again, this is not an individual who is just part of the quote-unquote Free Palestine movement from the Islamic side of things. He's part of the movement from the Marxist revolutionary side of things. Their words, not mine. Like the actual honest-to-God kind of communists, like the kind of people that I saw in Chicago, that after the speech from their goober on the soapbox was finished, took off their weird village people sex worker leather cap and instead put on a batting helmet and pulled out a baseball bat and then went to march in Chicago. So as far as the Marxist revolutionaries, now we have had two individuals from the Marxist communist left who encouraged to be revolutionary, who have been encouraged that if they don't do something, everyone will die, have now committed open assassinations in the American public. One in Washington, D.C. And by the way, I've heard some of the individuals over on the right suggesting, I don't care, they're Israeli. What do I care about this? If you don't care about an individual in New York openly assassinating an individual for political reasons, or an individual in Washington, D.C., a communist, openly assassinating two individuals for political reasons, you are willfully ignorant. You are willfully choosing to be a fool. Communists openly assassinating people on American soil is, in fact, a problem. And those who enable them by consistently touching, I don't want to do any kind of condemnation of that. After all, the only issues in this country, as CNN's good old Donnie O'Sullivan said, that's political violence is a monopoly owned exclusively by the right, of course.
America was found, make America great again to when they came and massacred the indigenous people, millions and millions of indigenous people.
But by supporting the murder of a healthcare CEO, doesn't that make your side as culpable?
I don't hear them condemning the Proud Boys, who he said stand by, whatever it is. Once they start condemning them, then I will reassess. But until then, no, I'm not reassessing.
Yeah.
About a third of the building has been blown away.
And while America's roots are soaked in bloodshed, violence in the country today is mostly from right-wing extremism. From Oklahoma City to Charlottesville to January 6th. There is simply no equivalent on the left.
There's simply no equivalent. Oh man, the open assassinations, my God, can't possibly dig into those. Donnie has, of course, been quiet ever since. And the media and the left-wing enablers, like individuals like Taylor Lorenz, who was obsessed, fawning over Luigi Mangione, who killed the United Healthcare CEO. Again, not even for a situation in which, he felt screwed over by that insurance company. Just an angry communist, mad at the system, been told that everyone's going to die due to these awful, evil, greedy Jewish capitalists and whatever. Taylor Lorenz was obsessed with this guy and was just shocked that anyone would be mad that she was, again, just creepily in love with these open communist assassins.
Hilarious to see these millionaire media pundits on TV clutching their pearls about someone standing a murderer when this is the United States of America, as if we don't lionize criminals, as if we don't have, we don't stand murderers of all sorts, and we give them Netflix shows. There's a huge disconnect between the narratives and angles that sort of mainstream media pushes and what the American public feels.
Which is a wild thing to say, that because, this one murderer from like 30, 40, 60, 100 years ago had a Netflix show, like a documentary about this individual's crimes. That means that America loves this particular criminal. They love him. Fantastic. So that means I should be allowed to love. So my condolences to Taylor Lorenz, who now has two different communist assassins to choose from. It really is disgusting watching the media turn around and suggest that, the real problem here is that, everyone's going to be really mean to the Free Palestine protesters now, which, in case you didn't know, is in fact a Norm Macdonald joke. Norm Macdonald once made the joke that if there ever was an Islamic terror organization that set off a dirty nuke, which was a consistent fear for a long time if Iran got a nuclear weapon, in New York City, then there would be a massive rise in Islamophobia. That would be the problem. The joke being that the media are far more concerned with anyone hurting the poor feelings of those on the red, green, brown alliance of the Islamic fundamentalists and brown shirt pseudo-fascists and Marxists in the red. God forbid anyone hurt those particular feelings on the left. Now we actually have a CNN anchor trying to make that very case this morning.
Do you see a line?
Hilarious to.
I don't have the clip ready. I'll grab it real quick here.
As you go forward with what you have seen, Can you give us any sense, because you said you looked the shooter in the eyes, can you give us any sense of what you saw in him as he was sort of getting help and people were tending to him as if he too was a victim of seeing this?
Yeah, well, to be clear, I heard about that part because we were in the secure room when he initially walked in. I just saw him screaming and then being handcuffed. But what I saw in his eyes, I mean, I went to Columbia for grad school, and I saw the same thing in his eyes as I saw in the eyes of all the protesters at Columbia. Nothing different between him and them. But
They did not create this horrific shooting. They did not, they didn't shoot.
They gave permission. They gave the permission. And they've called for this. They have called for Intifada revolution, which is the same thing he yelled last night.
Do you worry that there will be a
Notice how she doesn't address that calling for global Intifada, the violent revolution, that's what they're chanting for on Columbia, at various universities around the country. That is, in fact, what they are chanting. She completely glosses over it.
Conflation, though, of the two, those people who are speaking their mind, who really care about what is happening in Gaza, and those people who are like this person who did this horrific shooting, who intend to do harm.
A conflation. I mean, they are calling for Intifada.
Yeah, are you worried that maybe people will start to see those calling for murder as those who take the leap and do the murder? Yeah, that is in fact rather linked. Now, over on the other side of the identity politics wing, Representative LaMonica McIver, you may remember her from body slamming and punching federal agents on her way into an ICE facility. LaMonica McIver, targeted with federal charges, appeared before a judge today and was ordered to surrender any firearms that she had, and she has also been banned from traveling outside the United States. No bail to be posted. She could face up to 8 years in prison. Boy, she's fundraising off the situation, though, like nobody's business. So the Democrats are completely losing their mind. They're saying this is just super duper ultra fascism. James Carville decided to take the opportunity to claim on MSNBC this is clearly just racially motivated. It's all race yet again. I knew it.
Do you see a line crossed here? And what is the way for your party to deal with it?
Well, so many lines have been crossed, so many lines have been erased. I don't even know if any lines left. For me, and this is my personal opinion, I think they went after her, and I think her race has something to do with it. I'll just flat out say that.
You're of the view, and it's my job. I'll let you finish. It's my job, James. Yeah, no, but it's my job to ask you to substantiate it. But you're of the view. You're of the view. Well, I'll let you finish. You're of the view.
I can't substantiate it, but I think it's racist. Okay, yeah, that worked really well last time around. Go right ahead, try it yet again. Again, racism for me. It's everyone is just out to get me because of the genitals I have and the color of my skin. Fantastic. Good luck. Good luck to you. Not necessarily going to function. Again, the media just learned this. It was just a major focus of the prior election. And they're going to run it again. The same rallying cry is going to drive this party into the ground. All of the individuals who have come out and said the Democrat Party actually needs to get a plan together have been explicitly ignored, and instead they're going to trot out Jasmine Crockett and Representative McIver and AOC and Ilhan Omar and the same goofy goober squad to do the exact same thing that is grossly, deeply unpopular with the American people. We'll be back in just a second to dive into the alternative to this, which it turns out actually is rather useful and it's actually doing some good. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
On the flip side of things, the Trump administration, along with Republicans in Congress, both the moderates and the populists, are no longer taking the accusations of racism and sexism and homophobia and the other kinds of phobias seriously anymore, nor should they. Again, the Trump administration was lambasted by the media. All of the headlines that Trump ambushed. He ambushed the South African president by playing videos from South Africa after the South African president, good old Cyril, said, well, he will listen to people from South Africa and then he will understand there is no genocide. Trump's like, okay, let's hear from some people in South Africa. Click. All of the South African diplomats' heads went immediately down, desperate to ignore what was playing on the screen. So today, an NBC reporter desperately tried to throw her hat into the ring with Carolyn Levitt. Again, a bold move. If you're going to go after a member of the Trump administration, I just don't think that Carolyn Levitt is really the one to tangle with. Not necessarily a decision I would have made, but then again, I'm literate.
Yamish, good to see you.
Hi, good. Thanks for taking my question.
Sure.
The president showed a video that he said showed more than 1,000 burial sites of white South Africans that he said were murdered. We know that that was not true and that the video wasn't showing that. So I wonder, why did the president choose to show that?
What's not true, Yamish?
It's not true that the video was showing a burial site. It is unsubstantiated that that's the case.
No, it is true that video showed the crosses that represent.
Which is what the president claimed.
The video showed images of crosses in South Africa about white farmers who have been killed and politically persecuted because of the color of their skin. And those crosses are representing their lives. Those crosses are representing their lives in the fact that they are now dead and their government did nothing about it. Are you disputing that there's no...
I'm disputing the fact that the video showed what the president claimed it showed, because it did not show that. But even more, what I'm asking you is who at the White House...
No, it did show that. It showed white crosses representing people who have perished because of racial persecution.
Verifies the videos that the president shows, and what protocols are in place when there's unsubstantiated information being put out for the world and world leaders to show?
I love that, by the way. Again, the leading questions are just incredible. What policies are in place for people who, try to put unsubstantiated claims as though that's all like what CGI generated? Again, the field of crosses. It's all CGI. I mean, that's unsubstantiated. Everything's hunky-dory there. It's incredible. I mean, rainbows are shooting off the coast of South Africa every day.
Unsubstantiated about the video. The video shows crosses that represent the dead bodies of people who were racially persecuted by their government. In fact, the Associated Press, of all places, has a picture of that very monument, and the caption from the Associated Press is, "Each cross marks a white farmer who has been killed in a farm murder." So it is substantiated, not just by that video and the physical evidence that everybody saw on display in the Oval Office, but also by another outlet in this room, the Associated Press. So you should take it up with them if you believe the claim is unsubstantiated. And
again, correct. So the media, which is desperately trying to just gloss over this to provide any kind of cover that they can for the Democrat Party, which is once again returning to the same nasty, moldy water trough of identity politics, desperate to claim that everyone is against them because, they're white supremacists and then they hate women and they hate the working class people. They're going to try this again and again and again while consistently losing more and more and more of the demographics that they claim they're fighting for every election. Again, more individuals from the various black communities of the United States, as well as the various Hispanic and Latino communities of the United States, moved to the right in this prior election than like almost any election since like the 2000s. And I mean 2000, not 2000s in that particular case. So again, feel more than free in this particular instance to try this nonsense. Not only is Carolyn Levitt not taking that one sitting down, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, after he was done in the Senate on Monday, decided that it was time for the House Foreign Affairs Committee to also get a few of their questions answered. What followed was Representative Gabe Amo of Rhode Island and Pramila Jayapal of Washington, when she's not checking her pager, to get royally wrecked. Again, Marco Rubio, many have been surprised by the performance of the Secretary of State. I have not. I said it when he was appointed, when he was confirmed, that Rubio is a solid pick. An absolutely stellar individual for how many hats he's wearing. So Rubio clarifies initially that in the United States, foreign aid is not just a right of every country to demand from us, and it was never intended to be.
Yes, we canceled a bunch of contracts in USAID. Some were stupid and outrageous. Others didn't serve the national interest, and others we kept. And we are folding it under the Department of State. And you know why? Because we want it to be part of the toolbox of foreign policy, not a standalone. It is not charity. Foreign aid is not charity. It is designed to further the national interest of the United States.
Especially from USAID, which was created for the explicit purpose of essentially being a slush fund for JFK to coerce other countries to working with us instead of the Soviet Union. I mean, that's not disputed in any historical record. The Trump administration walked in, looked at what was going on in USAID and was like, transgender comic books for Colombia. What? And axed a lot of the programs. And so you had individuals like Representative Gabe Amo trying to box Rubio in, saying that, again, the identity politics, what you really want, you want poor children to starve. How could you? And it just doesn't land. And Rubio doesn't take it for a second.
So my question for you is, are you doing everything you can to keep starving children from dying?
There was no State Department delays to that being deployed. There may have been other delays, but it wasn't State Department.
There were State Department delays. And it is clear that you have not done everything you can do to keep these kids from starving, because there are another 108. There are another 108.
By the way, I do enjoy that. Did you do this? Rubio's like, no, that wasn't a State Department decision. And so the representative responds, well, yes, it is. Do you have like a citation, a source, piece of information that would back up that it was a State Department signature that delayed said aid? No.
85,000 boxes of roughs that the U.S. government and taxpayers have already paid for sitting in that same warehouse, all because the State Department doesn't have a plan, doesn't have its stuff together to get this rolling. So I can think of several countries where this aid is desperately needed.
So he tries to make the equivalency here that because there is aid that was designated and the State Department has not come in and like created some kind of a 5-op order to get these boxes out yesterday, that this is the State Department explicitly delaying. That's not how that works. This is an individual who is in Congress who is just making up rules about how logistics functions. And if this man has never seen any bureaucracy move ever, I mean, I'm impressed. That's some major living under a rock stuff.
Where these boxes of roughs could save hundreds of thousands of children's lives. And these delays have real consequences, not just for starving children, but also jobs at home. I talked to the CEO of Adija, who said they had to lay off 10% of their team due to the lack of payments from the U.S. government and a lack of clarity in March. So Secretary Rubio, will you commit to making decisions needed to move the remaining 185,000 boxes of roughs to countries that need them by the end of this week?
Well, I'd be interested to learn what those impediments are.
Well, we've been talking about this for a while. I've sent you letters since January.
But there's no impediment on our end to distributing that.
There are impediments. I'm speaking directly to the
Sudan
source.
is a war zone.
Secretary, I'm reclaiming my time.
There it is. I'm reclaiming my time. So Rubio starts to answer the question, starts to engage in some dialogue here. And the representative, realizing he has in fact been embarrassed, immediately Rubio is going to clarify why particular boxes in a warehouse, maybe in a war zone, have not been moved. Again, he's made the case that not a direct State Department decision. You have to coordinate. The State Department doesn't have a standing army. The State Department has to coordinate with the chiefs of staff to provide security, or a contracting service has to be allocated. Or realistically, revetted, hired, and then assigned after being given an oversight order. So Secretary of State Rubio is getting into that particular answer to the question and realizing that Amo is about to be curb stomped. I'm reclaiming my time. No more comments or questions, please. These committees, every single one of these is political theater for the representative. Unfortunately, when the identity politics come right out to the front and Rubio essentially says no, you can watch people like Pramila Jayapal, who, again, has been remarkably quiet since the terror attack last night. Earlier this week, though, she's all, how could you possibly just suggest ending a visa because they're calling for murder? You horrible, terrible person.
Student was a guest in the United States on a student visa. No one's entitled to a student visa.
So you revoked her student visa based on an op-ed which trumps the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution.
Someone's coming up here to stir up problems on our campus. We're going to revoke their visa.
She didn't do any of that. She wrote an op-ed. She wrote an op-ed, and I'm talking to you about.
I love that, by the way. I love that Rubio made content claims. And he said, these are the actions that were inspired by what this person wrote. And then Pramila she decides to, again, evade what the accusation was made by Rubio, and instead says, oh, no, I'm only going to describe the vehicle for which she delivered her actions. So, for example, if I robbed a bank and then I am taking the money home in my car and the police stop me and can be like, dude, you just robbed a bank. And be like, no, I'm just driving my car, man. What's the problem? I'm just driving. I'll be like, yeah, but like getting out of that bank parking lot, you hit like 3 people. Well, dude, I'm just driving my car. Why are you getting so upset about this? It's not bad to drive a car, is it?
Her particular case,
claims and your claims. Those are not the facts.
You reclaiming my time, you revoked her student visa because
proudly.
she wrote an op-ed.
And
Would you revoke?
We're going to do more. We will revoke the visa of anyone who's in this country as a guest who's here to stir up trouble.
Are you going to revoke the visa of somebody who made that?
The case. I'll look at it. I'm looking.
So she actually gets it. Are you going to revoke the visa of someone who, in an op-ed, made that statement? Well, it depends what the statement is. You know, if they're out there saying that, again, a certain group needs to be ethnically targeted and systematically wiped out, then yeah, I mean, they don't get to be here just because they're here. Again, immigrants in this country here on visa do not enjoy the same constitutional freedoms that citizens of the United States do. That has consistently been United States policy of every single administration for the entire history of this country.
Well, actually, it's not just about revoking. You actually, Secretary Rubio, excuse me, reclaiming my time. If these are legitimate law enforcement agents carrying out proper arrests, why are they hiding their identities?
Because then radical crazies will try to hurt them.
Now, wait a minute here. Radical crazies might try to hurt. Pramila laughs him off. Oh, come on. No one's being inspired for violent. Well, it turns out that, in fact, yes, that did inspire violence. That movement consistently inspires violence. Consistently. And I seem to have lost all track of the individuals over on the left who were screeching about stochastic terrorism, about libs of TikTok and Chaya, because they said that boys can't be girls. And therefore, Chaya was instantly responsible for some individual calling in a bomb threat to some gender transition place. But apparently, when an individual says, oh, you have to get out there and stop the Israelis, free, free Palestine, and then an individual goes out and tries to stop the Israelis, shouting free, free Palestine, that's the part that's not connected. Ah, got it. The infighting is also not very great over on the left. Even the Washington Post is getting to turn on Jill Biden. This Biden cover-up scandal is really getting worse by the second. Now, a lot of the country's not really feeling it because we all been new, as the phrase goes. A lot of us, we've known that Jill Biden was covering for her dead husband. And yes, in fact, covering up the president's cancer and dementia is a horrible act of elder abuse. It's disgusting and despicable. And Hunter Biden and Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi and the individuals who acted against the people of the United States, not to mention President Joe Biden, by essentially leading a man to die so that they could install someone who was entirely unelectable. Well, I mean, you know, it turns out that's not very popular. And there are even just a few, a hint, a smattering of individuals over in the media who are recognizing this is not a ship that is going to right itself. It's time to jump before it goes completely under the water. Captain, I think we've hit an iceberg. The Washington Post, I'll make this clear. A story reported by Fox, the New York Post, and others. Prominent Washington Post journalist Sally Quinn turning on Jill Biden during an interview with Tara Palmieri. It's certainly something.
What were your first thoughts when you heard that he had this level of prostate cancer that had metastasized all the way to the bone?
I was shocked because I don't see how it got this far. I mean, the President of the United States has the best medical care of anybody in the world, or should. And it should have been diagnosed a long time ago. And so it's hard for me not to believe that they didn't know about it. And we're waiting to reveal it until it got too aggressive. That's my little conspiracy theory, but I don't understand how it got this far.
Oh, I know how it got this far. Oh, I do. In fact, the majority of Americans know how it got this far because there were individuals who were desperate to ensure. And the best part is that Alex Thompson has described this over on the book tour that individuals in the Biden administration were shocked and almost couldn't believe how gullible the media was in taking anything that administration, anything that White House pushed out, anything at all, they'd amplify. They wouldn't ask any questions. They wouldn't say, that's really suspicious. They would just take it, face value, no problem, no question. And that even shocked, again, the Biden White House team. That's how gullible the media were, that it even shocked the administration, feeding them the garbage. So it really is a wild situation to see the legacy media kind of complex recognize that the left has no path going forward. They don't. There is no definitive plan they can put forward. Right now, there are two political parties in this country and a group of fools shouting from the outside. You have the kind of populist MAGA wing of the Republican Party, and then you have the more establishmentarian corporatist wing of the Republican Party. They are currently arguing over the future of this country and everything from immigration policy to national security policy to kind of foreign commerce in general, to all of the stuff in the big, beautiful bill, et cetera. And the left on the outside is just screeching into the wind. Hakeem Jeffries was smacked like 4 times today for making just outright false claims about the big, beautiful bill, saying, it's gonna cut Medicaid for all of these pregnant Americans. Nowhere in the bill at all does it say that. And he was criticized because he's like, we're just reading what comes in front of us. Yes. Yes. Wonderful strategy. Well, we're going to turn over to something that I think is really crucial here. Because the new administration is making moves all across the board, this includes things like taking care of our veterans. And despite some of the claims of individuals like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, the VA is taking a couple of crucial steps along with veterans aid organizations to make medical access for veterans and their families, for the first time, not the world's worst thing as far as the waits and the drive for those who are really distant from them. We're going to talk with Lieutenant Colonel Jim Whaley from Mission Roll Call in just a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
It's been about a year and one entire change of leadership in our country since we've spoken with Jim Whaley from Mission Roll Call, talking about giving veterans the support that they need, how we can ensure that when our troops leave the front lines, leave their post, and enter the private world again, to make sure that they are treated with the dignity, respect, and the care that they deserve and have earned. A new leadership brings in a whole lot of changes. And so, Lieutenant Colonel Whaley, thanks very much for joining us again.
Well, my pleasure to be here, as always.
So let's dive right into it. Big change, new Secretary of Defense. The staff is being cleaned from the brass downward. Tell us your initial thoughts.
Well, I think change is difficult for a lot of people. And clearly the Secretary and the President wanted to make the VA more responsive to veterans, to be cutting edge, to be the best VA it possibly can be. It's amazing to me that the same people that were always against, the VA, and the VA isn't doing this and isn't doing that and isn't responding and is not on the cutting edge of medicine, are the same people now that are against any kind of change.
Well, the kind of stagnant, festering bureaucracy that gets in the way of individuals actually accomplishing their mission of providing veterans the care that they need is, it's not a new tune. It's something that we're used to seeing, we're used to hearing for some time. Obviously, last time we had you on, again, a year ago, I can't believe that it has been that long already. You guys have a veteran-led approach to providing the kind of responsive services that vets need. What does that look like now? Again, it's been a year. Has anything changed? What remains the core mission? Tell us a little more about it.
Well, I think like you, we've grown. We're striking a chord with a lot of veterans. We do not filter any of the veterans' responses on our polls. We reach out to veterans in person as well as through our polling, through our app and on our website. And we take the results of those polls and use that with elected officials, both in the Senate and Congress, as well as with the media, to make sure that veterans' voices are heard, and we help amplify that voice. We're the only organization that does it that way. There's a lot of great veteran support organizations out there, but the challenge is it's done at a local level, and then it's filtered at the regional level, and then by the time it gets to the national level, it doesn't reach anybody that was from Indiana that said, hey, I wanted A, and now we're talking about L. So we think that's very important, and we can do it very quickly. And so we've been able to work with a number of different organizations to make sure polls get out there and put our finger on the pulse of veterans and their families, what's important to them, and then share that and bring awareness to it.
Anybody can say putting a finger on the pulse of something. It sounds like a kind of a cool catchphrase, but if I remember correctly, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, one of the cornerstones of Mission Roll Call is actually keeping in constant contact with the veterans throughout the time that you're providing support and care, which I know that sounds like kind of a no-brainer. That should be common sense, but that's not a common thing these days.
No. And it's working with veterans and their families, their spouses, and their dependents. And I think that's an important thing to highlight here. It's not just the veteran that has the challenge sometimes getting out of the service. Either they have a challenge making a transition to the civilian world, or maybe they don't. Maybe they have a traumatic brain injury. Maybe they don't. But in each of those cases, the family's affected and the spouses are affected. And you now have millions of dependent young adults providing care to those that served post 9/11. So I think it's important for us to make sure that we hear those voices and we share it with Congress and Senate, because sometimes they're a bit disengaged, and the fact is that only 1% of our population has served. So that distance has gotten bigger and bigger from those that have served and those that may not have any knowledge of what service looks like.
Absolutely. Now, we've also had the honor of working a little bit before with the offices of Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Jim Banks, and their veteran-centric, their troop-centric legislation they've put forward, for example, providing expanded school choice for those who are in active service and recent veterans. I know that Mission Roll Call, you guys spend a lot of time working with various representatives and, again, the senators and those kind of groups. When you're talking with senators about the necessary reforms that need to come to the service right now, what's top of the list priority for you?
Well, I think the Access Act is very important so that veterans can get the health care where they need it, when they need it, and how they need it is very important.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what the Access Act means here? Just a little more for maybe the common layman who doesn't quite understand the need for it and then what it solves.
Sure. Well, to keep it as tight as I possibly can, it allows veterans to get health care in a community type of way. So let's say you're a veteran and you're 250 miles away from the nearest VA. That's difficult for you to get to, especially if you're sick, especially if you're financially strapped, especially if you have a job and it's hard to get there. The whole idea is to allow veterans to use community care to be able to get the health care that they need. There's a lot of veterans that slip through the cracks because they can't do that. And, the VA has a budget of $500 billion and 470,000 plus employees, more employees than there is in the entire United States Army. So it gives you a sense of the size of it. But there's still, with that, they only serve about half of the veterans that are in America. There's 18 million veterans out there. So allowing veterans to get access to health care, I think, is the right thing to do, and it allows veterans to be able to get that health care in a timely manner. I think the other important legislation that we're working with a number of other VSOs is to make sure the Second Amendment Act, Veterans Second Amendment Act, is passed into law. Right now, it's a temporary situation. So if you were a veteran and you went to the VA and you said, hey, I I have bad dreams. I have post-traumatic stress. Your name was immediately sent to the FBI data list, and you weren't allowed to own or buy a weapon. So without a judge even being involved in that. So
that's disgraceful.
Some administrative person within the hierarchy of the VA would be making those decisions. The secretary of the VA is not in support of continuing that process and supports the act that will allow veterans to have the same rights as any other American. Seems absurd and lack of common sense that those that defend our rights would be not allowed to exercise their Second Amendment rights. And we're just asking that they fall into the same categories of any other American. That is, if you're doing it, a judge needs to be involved and make that decision.
If you're going to make some kind of a decision, again, especially regarding an individual who's made a considerable sacrifice for their community and their country, at least giving them the same standard of, to use the buzzwords everyone's using right now, due process, would in fact make a lot of sense. I do want to talk very briefly about the family support. Right now, we're at a point in our country where it appears a lot of Americans are again concerned with how families are falling apart at an incredibly horrific rate. Again, the rates of divorce, the lack of marriage in this country is going to have some long-term effects. One of the things that I see a lot of veterans go through is a struggle returning to marriages, returning to family life, and they're dealing with a lot of difficulties in keeping that marriage strong and grounded. Is there anything that Mission Roll Call does in regard to services and providing services to families, I should say, that makes it, maybe not makes it easier, essentially that just kind of reaches out a helping hand for those who are kind of struggling in that fashion?
Well, I think what we do is we're very open to veterans and their family members to be involved with Mission Roll Call. So you don't have to be a veteran to go to our website, to enroll in our polling, to be involved, to check those, to get the app. We don't discriminate in that way. We want veterans and their families, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, brothers, sisters to be involved with it, because we know it's a holistic family issue when a veteran struggles to find a job or a family is struggling to come together. And what
everybody
we do,
shares that burden, right?
Everybody shares that burden, both emotionally and financially. So what we do is we have some vetted organizations within our website that we steer veterans to get involved with. We think it's very important that a veteran plugs in to the community and also plugs into another veteran support organization. You know as well as I do, there's a different language among us veterans, and sometimes just being with another veteran helps you vent a little and maybe come up with a way to navigate a problem. A shared issue sometimes is easier to solve. And so veterans usually have those shared experiences and shared challenges and coming together. So we don't ask veterans to just come and join Mission Roll Call. We ask them to plug into other veteran support organizations in their community so that they can get the help that they need and the camaraderie they need. One of the biggest things that veterans face when they get out is that lack of purpose, that lack of being part of something bigger than yourself. And I always thought how easy we could solve this problem if the VA and the Department of Defense would work closer together. And so when somebody's getting out of the service, that they could voluntarily say, yes, I want to share my name with the veteran support organization. And that veteran support organization should be one that's not looking for paid membership, but it should be one like Mission Roll Call and like so many others that just says, hey, Charlie, Mary, we know you just got out of the military. We'd like to take you out for a cup of coffee or lunch and talk about what your goals are and plug you into the community and help you. I know when I got out, I had a wonderful job. I had a great family. It looked seamless on the surface. Underneath that, I was missing something. And it would have been so much welcomed if somebody had reached out to me and said, hey, Jim, see, you were in the Army for 20 years. We'd like you to come and play some golf with us, or let's have some coffee and talk about what you're doing. That would have made a big difference.
There's a critical difference between an organization being led in a well-meaning fashion by those who haven't been around the service and those who are, in fact, veterans leading in that particular area. And so to have someone who's been through what you've been through, leading an organization that's supposed to be providing help and services to you, kind of doesn't just make a small difference. It makes, I'd argue, almost all the difference.
Yeah, and I'm kind of committed to the cause. My wife was a veteran and a West Point graduate, helicopter pilot. I have 3 daughters. 2 are on active duty right now. 1 deployed in South Korea, and the third one, working for a veteran support organization. So I have my fingers on what's going on out there. And,
I'll say
what the challenges are with both being on active duty and making transitions.
You've got your own private signal corps. That's incredible.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, my own polling agency out there. So what's going on? But you're so right. I think the other challenge veterans have is just some of the basics that may not be covered under the TAP program, the Transition Assistant Program. I mean, the Army's just not good at that. The Army's great in bringing people in. Navy's great about people in. Air Force is wonderful about people in, and they inculcate you into their ethos, and you become part of this team, this squadron, this platoon, and yourself gets remade into, airman or specialist or Marine. But when you get out, that's not the case during the transition program. As soon as you say you're getting out, you're put through that program and you're kind of out the door. And one of the things that is missing in that program is the ability to plug into another community and understand some of the basics, right? People get out and figure, I've made $50,000 on active duty, but now I got a job that's paying me $65,000. I'm going to make a lot more money. Well, maybe not. You need to learn finances a little bit, because now you got to pay for healthcare. Now you got to pay for your own housing. Now you got to do a bunch of other things. So now the delta is a little bit tight. So all those type things we provide on our YouTube page: financial planning, how to navigate the VA, how to be entrepreneurial, how to start a business, all these sort of things that help veterans do this. And I think the faster the Department of Defense and the VA realize that their world is so intertwined to each other, and understand that veteran issues are recruitment issues.
Correct. Right on the money. I would expect nothing less at all. Lieutenant Colonel Jim Whaley, thank you very much for hopping on with us. Of course, head over to missionrollcall.org. Share that with a vet in your life. I'd recommend it. Thanks again, sir.
Thank you.
We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
We are going to get caught up if it kills me. And so that brings us over to the very last of the big news from today, and that would be the budget reconciliation. The big, beautiful bill has passed the House. We're going to be on with Bradley Devlin, our political editor, tomorrow to talk about its road through the Senate. A lot of stuff in it, a lot of stuff not in it. We're taking a little bit of our extra due diligence time here to make sure that we look through the entire thing before kind of breaking it down for you. In the Supreme Court side of things, the Supreme Court ruled in a very weird 4-4 ruling that Oklahoma cannot create the nation's first religious charter school funded directly with taxpayer dollars. And the reason that was a 4-4 decision is because Justice Amy Coney Barrett recused herself from the decision. She said that she might have some kind of professional connections with individuals in the case, and so chose not to be a part of it. I think that realistically, it's not necessarily going to be a big deal given the ESA school choice measures, which are starting to make their way through the House. School choice is, in fact, going to continue its march across the country, and education savings accounts where parents choose how to spend those dollars directly into any school is eventually how that's going to end up. This is one of my favorite pieces of news to share. Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem posted earlier today, this would be at around 2 p.m., quote, "This administration is holding Harvard accountable for fostering violence, anti-Semitism, and coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party on its campus. It is a privilege, not a right, for universities to enroll foreign students and benefit from their higher tuition payments to help pad their multi-billion-dollar endowments. That sentence is wholly objectively true. There are a lot of things that people in the United States, that companies, that organizations get to do that is technically a dictated decision of the United States foreign policy. Neither you nor I have any kind of a right under the Constitution to dictate United States foreign policy, especially if there is a concern of national security in regard to the radical Islamic groups from the Middle East, as well as the Chinese Communist Party. And Harvard essentially just pocketing the cash and allowing all kinds of nonsense that is at the expense of American citizens, not to mention the taxpayers whose money goes into some of those endowments and grants. The Secretary of Homeland Security just said, all right, fine. You have now lost your student and exchange visitor program certification as a result of your failure to adhere to the law. So let me walk you through the timeline on this really quickly. The Trump administration, before the Trump administration came in, the leadership at Harvard got caught for lots of plagiarism because a lot of them are equity hires, submitted to climb the rungs of the ladder because of their color and because of their sex, instead of because of, merit, character, and knowledge. Then they discriminated against actively over 2 decades against individuals who were white, Jewish, Asian, etc., in order for Harvard to falsely and grossly manipulate the SAT and ACT acceptance rate scores for those of what they considered underprivileged communities, which included Black Americans and then sometimes Hispanic Americans. And I do mean sometimes because in these arguments about racial disparity, Hispanic people are increasingly left out of the conversation because, according to the left, they do too well. Or at least according to Gloria Ladson-Billings, Hispanic students, they do too well for how brown they are, which is, again, oh my God. So as far as Harvard is concerned here, they messed around, and now they are finding out. And it's fantastic. It is. It is, in fact, wonderful to see a university that believed that because it was Harvard, it could just do whatever it wanted and there would never be any consequences for that. No. If you ask for favors from the federal government, then you better be following federal policy. If you choose not to do so, then it turns out you might be in violation of some of those federal policies, and the federal strings attached to your school might be pulled. And that's what we're seeing over at the moment. Last but not leastly, Myung-Jae Jun, a Biden-appointed U.S. district judge, blocked the Trump administration from shutting down the Department of Education and is ordering the reinstatement of more than 1,300 employees who were fired. This is really, really, really funny because we knew that if Jun would have just said the president doesn't have the authority to close the U.S. Department of Education since Congress has essentially codified its existence into law, okay, there might be a little bit of an argument for that based on congressional precedent. To say they have to hire back 1,300 employees, no, all of those employees serve at the pleasure of the president. There is nowhere in any congressional budget measure, there is nowhere in any reconciliation measure, there is nowhere in any establishment of the Department of Education that states how many employees there must be, either in gross or per capita. So, no, that's going to get this particular thing struck down. The very best that Judge Jun can hope for in this particular instance is that the higher courts, probably the appellate in this case, because this is a really easy one to knock over, is going to rule partly in favor and partly against, so that Trump likely needs an act of Congress to turn the DOE back into the Office of Education instead of the Department of Education. And there's no judge that can order the executive government to just hire people. That's been struck down again and again and again now because that is patently retarded. So that all said, that does bring us up to date. Tomorrow, I will be out of state. So what we've got for you is a really great interview, not only with Bradley Devlin, we're going to be talking a little bit about the curious situation regarding the big, beautiful bill passing the House and what it can expect in the Senate. And then we're sitting down with a guy named Todd Schulte over from Forward, which is a nonprofit talking about immigration policy. And we have a good discussion because we very, very, very much disagree on immigration. But hey, Maybe you'll find something useful out of it. If not, at least it'll be entertaining. I'm Tony Kinnett, and this has been the Daily Signal's Tony Kinnett Cast. We'll be back tomorrow. Take care.